screen?
Yeah? Yes, you can see it, yes.
Good, okay, fine. So the topic of this talk is using learning-rich games with young learners, as you can see on the screen. And I have 45 minutes, yes? Till...
that is correct, yes.
Till 10 to whatever. It's here it's 10 to 10, but with you it'll be 10 to 7, right? In Israel, it's a nice sunny morning, a little bit of wind, beginning to get cooler into the autumn. Right, so using learning-rich games with young learners, I'll be talking about play, games, and how to use them, and showing some examples. I've got a lot to get through, so I hope I'll manage it in 45 minutes. Okay, so let's move first on to definitions. What is play? I'm going to distinguish between play and games, although obviously they overlap. Play is any activity which you do for fun or pleasure, and it's sort of a time out. It's not part of our serious transactional functions in daily life. It's temporary time out, as it were. It often involves make-believe. You sort of imagine you're someone else or somewhere else from reality, and has a clear beginning and ending in time. You know when you're playing, and you know when you're back to serious real life. Game is a sort of subset of play. A game is a sort of organized play. It has a clear goal. It's not just taking time out to have fun, but there is some kind of goal which is made challenging and fun by the introduction of what we call rules, artificial limitations. So for example, tennis, you're trying to hit the ball so that your opponent cannot hit it back, but you have to get it between the white lines, and you have to get it over the net, and so on. And the same is true of any game you like to mention, chess or football or any card games. They have their rules, a clear goal and rules. So let's try one. Let me see if I can get the chat box working. Just a second. Right, got it. And I'm going to show you a blurred picture and see if you can guess what it is. Okay, any guesses? Really difficult, this one. So you say a fish, a squid, maybe. Let's make it a little bit more focused. Any better? Person lying on their side, you're getting nearer, higher, right? This slightly more focused. Monkeys, baby duck. Nice, okay. And here's the answer. Right, well done, Anne. I think you got in just before I showed it. It's a kitten. Okay, so that's a game, okay? So the goal is to guess something, and the constraints or the rules, the things that makes it difficult, is the blurredness, which gradually gets clearer until you get the right answer. Let's look at some examples of play. A make-believe play, alternative realities, I call it. So it's role play. We'll talk about different kinds of play in a moment, other than the make-believe. But role play, which we use quite a lot in the classrooms, a temporary escape, as it were, from present reality, enjoyment of a make-believe world, but with underlying awareness of reality and return to it. So you know it's not real. It's not that you're deluded into thinking it's real. You know it's not real, and you're returning to it. So a lot of sort of virtual reality activities online are this kind of play. But with younger learners, I use it, here's an example, based on a dialogue. If you give them a dialogue to learn by heart, but actually to play it out like this. So they learn the dialogue, and then I give the children either real fruits and vegetables and foods or little cards with pictures, which is easier. And other students have shopping lists, and they have to go round the classroom and meet each other. Some of them are sellers, some of them are buyers, and they are using this dialogue repetitively, but they are, as it were, role-playing shoppers and sellers. Good morning, can I help you? Yes, please, I'd like some cucumbers. Here you are, thank you very much, you're welcome, have a good day. And you notice that this dialogue, apart from being very natural, has a lot of very useful interactive chunks. Okay, can I help you? I'd like, here you are, thank you very much, you're welcome, have a good day. All of these are useful vocabulary chunks which they can use later in their own discourse. But it's basically role playing. And they buy and they sell till they have all their lists, and then we change roles and do it again. Another kind of play is what I call language play, light-hearted playing with ideas for pleasure or humor. Jokes, for example, are language play, amusing juxtapositions where you put things together which don't really belong and look funny. Joking exchanges, let's look at an example in, sorry, I forgot to show these. Joking exchanges, repartee, banter. Let me show you an example which practices either the present perfect or the past tense for slightly more advanced class, but still young learners. So the task here is to look at the table with all those exclamations in it and invent a sentence which would lead someone to respond with the one you've chosen. So you choose, for example, congratulations, and you say, we've won the game, or we won the game, depending on whether you decide you are practicing present perfect or the past tense. So the task, what I'm going to ask you to do is this. Choose one of the items, one of the exclamations, and write in the sentence in the past which led to that reaction. And the rest of us will try to guess what your exclamation was. Okay, can someone write in a past tense leading to one of the exclamations? Or present perfect, if you prefer. I'm British, so I tend to do it in the present perfect. Americans would tend to do it in the past, I think. Okay, you've broken my washing machine. They've been found. The train is finally up and running again. I got a raise. Let's take the last one. I got a raise. Well, that's not really for younger learners, but never mind. I got a raise. And the response would be, so what do you think the response would be? Congratulations, or that's a relief, or whatever. Cool. Wow, thank goodness. Yes, okay, so you're practicing. This elicits a lot of language. What happens very often is you get someone saying, we won the football tournament yesterday, expecting the response, congratulations, and someone shouts out, I'm sorry about that, or oh no, and everybody laughs because it's an unexpected, rather funny response. But again, the fact that people laugh, I mean, they've understood, and you've got a real interaction there. And it's playing with ideas, but with a serious grammar target, and it produces a lot of sentences in the past and present perfect, and a lot of fun. So that's language play. Let's look at some other examples of language play. Interrupting a story. The teacher starts telling a story, and the students interrupt with questions. So, for example, I say, well, last week I was walking, and the student raises his hand. I have to stop as soon as a student raises his hand. And he says, where were you walking? So, well, I was walking through the wood. And then another student raises her hand, and I say, well, what do you want? And she says, what time was it? And you go on, and they have to interrupt you all the time, which is fun. It's play, but it's a very good practice of question forms. And you may or may not get to the end of your story. any odd one out. Let me show you an example. Odd one out. Usually the odd one out exercises in textbooks have one obvious odd one out, but this one, for play purposes, has no particular odd one out. So, you know, any of these could be an odd one out, and the challenge is to argue why one of them is the odd one out. Okay, so for example, a fish, it's the only one which lives in the water. A cat, it's the only one which is usually a pet, and so on. And they think of all sorts of things, but it's play rather than a serious exercise. Another type of language play, an elephant is the only one starting with a vowel. Yep, that would work as well. Good. You could do all of them with the only one starting with a particular letter, but all sorts of ideas are legitimate here. Other examples, adding words or phrases to a brief sentence. This is one which you do on the board. You give them something like "she went," a very brief sentence, and you ask them to suggest how you might add, what you might add to that. Oops, screen sharing has stopped. I'm sorry. I tried to, let's see if I can take it back. Can you see that? Can you see that?
Yes, looks good.
Yes, good. Okay. And okay, so can you suggest what I might add to that sentence? And I'll see if I can do it. She went home. Okay, home. Someone else. 2. She went home in a hurry. 2. She half-heartedly. That's a very advanced student there. Went home in a hurry, in the rain. Okay, you've got the idea. I could carry on, but you see how it works, and you can do it, of course, with a marker on a whiteboard, or you can do it as I'm doing it electronically, using a projector or an interactive whiteboard or whatever you have.
Dr. Uhl, sorry
Yeah.
to jump in here. This is Grant. Can you switch to presenter mode where we see it? It's a little small.
Yes, this is on purpose so that I can edit it, but you
Oh,
can
okay.
read it, right?
We can read it. Yes.
Yes. As long as I'm editing, I want to leave it like this. As soon as I stop editing, I'll put it back on full screen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So the mirror image of that is this one. Taking a long text and suggesting you can delete up to 3 words, and as long as it remains making sense. Okay, so what might you delete here? Can you suggest in the chat box what I might delete? One day. Okay, I can delete one day. Okay. I can delete immediately. Where is immediately? Here we are. Immediately. I can delete steady. Where is steady? Yeah. Okay. And quickly. Okay, you see the idea? Again, it's play, and you can do it in any part of the text, and the teacher deletes whatever they say, and it gets a lot of very quick interaction and contributions going along there. Okay, I've finished editing, so I'll go back to full screen. Can you see that okay? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, right. So that's language play. Let's go on to games. Why play games? Why play games in English lessons? Well, obviously for fun, to increase enjoyment, to motivate students to participate, that it increases motivation, and importantly, to teach, to provide opportunities for learning, language learning or practice. Why, I want to look at the other side of the coin for a moment. Why might you not want to play games in the classroom? Some students may see them as trivializing language learning. You have more serious students, slightly older within the age group that we're talking about here. Some of the older, more serious students may think, well, it's wasting time, it's trivializing, it's not serious. More seriously, I think, from our point of view, we may waste time. Time may be wasted fiddling with cards, boards. If you have games which need a lot of equipment, it may take a long time to set them up or clear them up afterwards. You may, as Brian says, you may have bad behavior, you may have discipline problems, and there may be dubious, thank you, Catherine, dubious pedagogical value, and I'm going to be spending a little time focusing on this point. Catherine, I think it's a really important one. Thank you. You may find that in some games, many of the students may not be involved. Competitive students may go bonkers, yeah, make it so it's not too competitive. And they may not lead, back to Catherine's point, they may not lead to much language learning. It may be what sort of busy work, okay? And you want them to be learning rich. This is part of my title, and it's a really important point. Let's look at Hangman for a moment. Do you play Hangman in Japan with young learners? You know what I'm talking about? Not anymore. Good, Namika, I'm glad you don't anymore. But does it I mean, people know what I'm talking about, right? Yes, sometimes. Okay, hangmans with different pictures. Yes, right, Emily, I use a beetle instead of a hangman, right? We know it. A spider. Chris, yeah, I'm with you. I use a beetle, you use a spider, but it's the same idea. Yeah, okay, but the point is, as you all know, you have a series of dashes on the board. I'm not going to play this now, but it takes a little while. The learners call out the letters they had tried to guess, and for every wrong guess, you add something to your spider or hangman or beetle. And for every right guess, you fill in the letter until they get the right word. And when I ask teachers, why are you doing this? Why do you play hangman? They say, oh, well, for vocabulary or for spelling. But if you analyze what's going on while you're playing hangman, if you they take, say, about a minute in all to get to the correct word. About 55 seconds of that minute, they don't know what the word is, and they are calling out random letters, or if they're a good class, they're calling out frequent letters, to try to get near to the word. They are not, in fact, engaging with the target word. They are not learning what you want them to learn. It's really a waste of time in terms of learning. It's 90% just busy work rather than real learning. An alternative I want to suggest to you for practicing spelling is something I call recall and share. It's also a game, but rather richer in learning. I display on the board 10 words, and I tell them, photograph them in your mind, and then I'm going to take them off the board, see if you can remember them and write them down, and then they share. So here's the words. Okay, let's try it. Don't write anything down, just see if you can try to recall. These are words which an intermediate class of young learners might have trouble remembering the spelling of. They've got difficult spelling for one reason or another. And my students anyway often misspell them. So photograph them I then take them off the screen or erase them if I've written them up. And students try to remember as many as they can. Usually they remember about 4 or 5 the first time. Don't know how many you're remembering now. But then you say, okay, get together with the people sitting next to you or the people sitting behind you, people sitting in front of you, in groups of 2 or 3 or 4, and see if together you can get up to 9 or 10, maybe even 10, but certainly 8 or 9 of the original list. And then I display it again, and they check out what they remembered and what they forgot, focusing, of course, on the ones they forgot, because those are the ones which draw their attention at this point. And it's quite fun. But if you analyze this game, you'll see that actually there are 10 words instead of 1. They are engaging with them all the time, either reading or writing or saying or hearing or reading again. And the total amount of learning going on is much, much richer. So Hangman, I would say, does not have much language learning value. Recall and share does. Let's look at some criteria for evaluating a game. 1, was it really a game? I went into a lesson once and the teacher said, okay, guys, we're going to play a game. I'm going to say a word and you'll write it down. Yes, well, the next time the children heard that the teacher said, we're going to play a game, they all groaned. It wasn't really a game. So make sure it is a game. It's enjoyable and it has this sort of time-out feel and fun, motivating task to do. How many students were participating? Okay, for how much of the time? If you think about recall and share, virtually all of them are participating virtually all the time. In Hangman, quite a lot of them, but not all of them, only 1 at a time. So a lot fewer. So it's a question of participation. How much practice in the target language feature or skill were students getting? If the goal is speaking, how much were they speaking? If the goal is writing, how much were they writing? If the goal is vocabulary, how much were they engaging with the target vocabulary, and so on. Next question, how much preparation time did I need? Was it worth the investment? Did it take hours and hours to prepare? Did it involve expensive photocopying or time wasting searching on the internet for pictures? How much preparation time was needed? How much time was wasted in class with students not knowing or being inactive? For example, let's take word search. For example, a lot of the time, students are searching and not finding in a word search exercise. And the time spent not knowing is basically time they're not learning anything. So we want to keep it to a minimum. If there's a lot of time puzzling out or not knowing, as in Hangman as well, then that's not a good use of time. How much time is wasted setting up and closing, getting the students into groups, distributing whatever materials you need, gathering them together at the end, and so on. And this means that in general, try to avoid board games, because board games do involve a lot of giving out, collecting in stuff and finding dice and all sorts of things. Try to avoid games that involve a lot of preparation. Even online games. I mean, I used to play Kahoot, and then I realized that actually I was spending a lot more time preparing the Kahoot than the students were actually learning in the classroom, and it wasn't really worth it. So I stopped using it. And this goes for quite a lot of online as well as low-tech games. So games that involve a lot of preparation, think about whether the preparation is worth it. If I'm going to use that Kahoot another time with another class or other classes, then it's worth it. If it's a one-off, it probably isn't. Avoid word games. We've already seen Hangman word search. How many words could you find for a long word? This sort of thing. Again, because there's a lot of time spent not knowing, puzzling out relative to the amount of time spent engaging with the language and learning. Games that involve a lot of hanging around, waiting for someone to do something. Let's look now at some useful game or play formats. Just checking my time. Okay, I'm doing okay. Half past. Right, so useful game which I'd like to recommend. First of all, a whole family of guessing games. We've already done one today. Gradual display pictures, blur into focused, and you can do this. PowerPoint has a function which you can do this on PowerPoint. But an easier option is to take a paper picture and show a corner of it, or a bit of it, or the center of it, or the edge of it, and then gradual reveal. Or Andrew Wright does this thing where he flips the card with the picture, shows it for a split second, and then hides it again, and then for a bit longer, and they guess what the picture is. What do I have in my bag? Okay, for the very young learners, I bring a bag with all sorts of things in it, or toys or representations, like a sort of toy elephant or a toy car, and they have to guess what I have in my bag. And it practices, do you have, or is there a, and so on. Who am I? I pretend to be someone they all know, or a celebrity. Who am I? Can they guess who I am? Are you? Do you? All these kinds of questions. What am I doing? Mime. Where is the mouse? So this would practice prepositions. You imagine there's a mouse hidden somewhere in the classroom, and they have to guess, is it under the table? Is it on the table? Is it behind the board? Is it? And so on. I spy, using letters. Reverse guessing is where instead of one person, the class guessing something that the one knower knows, we have the whole class knowing what the answer is, and one person doesn't. And you write the answers on the board. So you write, for example, a whole list of sports: tennis, hockey, football, netball, and so on the board. And the class gives hints without saying the actual word as to what they are. And the person, or I usually do it with two people because 2 kids is less stressful than one. The two standing with their backs to the board have to, according to the hints given by the class, they have to guess what the items are on the board. And then you delete it and put another list up, and 2 other students come, and so on. So that's a nice one. Yes, I'm just looking at the chat box. Gradual reveal, yes, I used to put various objects in a bag and pull out the other. Yes, exactly. That's lovely. The same sort of idea as the gradual reveal of a picture, but is gradual reveal of an object. And just to back up what Gabby says, objects on the whole are more motivating than pictures. So if you do things with objects like you suggest here, then that's really good. Thank you. I'll add this to my next time I give this presentation. Yes. Okay. Yes, something about games. Tend to call games educational exercises. Yes. Interesting that you should say this. When I first started working on games, I also had reservations about calling them games. I called them, I remember I wrote an article years and years and years ago, before most of you were born. I wrote an article in an English teaching journal called When is a Game a GLAL? A game-like activity for language learning. I called them GLALs. And I very often prefer to use the phrase game-like rather than game, exactly for the reason you bring up here, because a game is associated with trivial, non-learning, non-serious, and you want them to be aware that these are serious language learning activities. So I totally accept what you say here. I'm using the word games in this presentation because it's a universally understood and clear term, but I do share your reservation about this. And if you can find another term which substitutes, which is still, but in fact, games or fun-like or playful activities which produce language learning, then that's great. Thank you very much for that point. Okay, that's really important. My last suggestion for guessing is, we'll do this, just take time out to do this for a moment. Doodles is when I scribble something on the board and say, what do you think this is? And there's no one right answer. So they suggest all sorts of things it might be. And the one who I think has the most original or interesting answer gets to draw the next doodle and so on. And unusual views, again, this is one of Andrew Wright's from one of his books. Have a look at this. What are these things? And you ask them, they're on purpose not numbered. So you choose any you like and say what you think it is. They're not numbered because if you do something unnumbered and ask them to relate whatever you like, that speeds up the process. They're not waiting to get to the one they know. Okay, any ideas? Brian, Ludo, ludology, yes, the science of games. The theory of games. Thank you very much for that. A car is the third one at the top, yes. It looks like a toilet, actually it isn't. I'll tell you what it is in a moment. Tape measure, no, it isn't. This is the door, yes, this one here. A bald head from above. Yes, this is the bald head from above, nice. And a man's head. Yeah. Some of them are a bit old-fashioned because this is a very old book, so you have to go back a generation or two. A shoe, very good. Yes, this is a shoe. This top right-hand one. And okay, here are the answers. Again, it produces a lot of talk, a lot of guessing, and it's quite fun to do with vocabulary, obviously. You can make your own. Another family of exercises, which is games, which is really useful, is brainstorming or creativity games, where think of as many X as you can, basically, that's what it is. So how many something can you think of? How many adjectives can you think of that describe a road? Okay, so a busy road, a narrow road, a wide road, a black road, a white road, all sorts of answers they can come up with, and it's challenging and fun. Or similarly, how many objects can you think of for this verb? What can you do with this? What can this verb have following it? Or how many nouns can you think of that go with this adjective? All sorts of variations on this. Things you could do with giving them one which I very often use is a pen. You give them a pen, put it on the table between them and say, okay, how many uses can you think of this? And they have to be uses, not just hold it or look at it, but things you could actually do with it. And they come up with all sorts of ideas. So you could use it to point, you could use it to write and draw, obviously. You can use it to make a hole in the ground if you want to plant something. There are all sorts of ideas. It's a slightly more advanced class, but still fun for teenagers or young learners. What a doodle represents, I already mentioned that. Reason for getting a named gift, this is rather more advanced. I have $1 million to give away. If you can give me a good reason why you should get it, I'll give it you. And here, rather more specific, I have a prize of $1 million. If you can tell me how you would use the $1 million to improve the environment, I'll give it to the group which has the best suggestion. Again, this is rather more advanced. Dialogue basis. Lots of lovely games based on dialogues, dramatic dialogues, acted out in different ways. Dramatic dialogues used as a basis for a game. Those of you who come from the States will know Who Stole the Cookies from the Cookie Jar, which is basically going around the class and each person denies that they took the cookie from the cookie jar and blames someone else. So Rose stole the cookies from the cookie jar. Rose says, who, me? Yes, you. Couldn't be. Then who? Jean stole the cookies from the cookie jar. Who, me? Yes, you. Couldn't be, and so on. And it goes pretty fast, and they each blame the other. I'll tell you what the variation I do on this later. There's an example which I haven't got time to go to now, but I'm going to send this PowerPoint to Martin and put it up on your website, so you'll be able to go in there and see it if you wish later. Then there's a whole family of role plays, simulations, improvisations. The game Alibi, where two students go outside and there's been a crime done at a certain time and place, and they have to come back one by one and say what they were doing with the other person. And then the other person comes in and asks the same questions, and you see if their stories back each other up, or whether they actually contradict each other, in which case they are guilty. Again, it's something which you can check out on the internet to find out the exact process. Committee decisions, asking committee to take a decision on candidates for something or on whether we should do something in school, actually playing the roles in the committee. Again, a bit more advanced, becoming less advanced. Why do you have a in your bag? This is a fun thing I say. It's totally imaginary. I say to a student, why do you have a monkey in your bag? And the student has to think of a good reason to justify having a monkey in their bag. Why do you have a lollipop in your bag? Why do you have a lipstick in your bag? And they have to think of good reasons, and then they accuse someone else. Why do you have something in your bag? Yes, all sorts of lovely coming up here from Brian. Thank you. Then there's improvisations, where you put them into pairs, and one pair says, makes a statement about what they're going to do. I'm going to go on a picnic. And the other one has to answer them with yes and they have to add. So yes and it's a lovely day to do it. Or another variation is yes but. I'm going to go on a picnic. Yes, but we don't have any food in the house. And the other person says, yes, but I can go to the supermarket and buy some, and so on, and so it goes on. There's lots of improvisation exercises like these on an online website, which you can look up later when you get the presentation. Picture-based games. Dictating pictures, describing pictures with a time limit, and I'll be talking about this a bit more in my next presentation. Changing pictures. Students tell each other how to change pictures, and they change details. Linking pictures. What's the connection between these two pictures? Or what are the differences between these two pictures? All these lead to, these are playing with ideas and basically games. My last session, I'm going to talk about introducing a play or game-like aspect into a routine exercise, or on the contrary, taking a game and making it richer from the point of view of language learning. So first of all, a routine exercise, making it playful, making it into a group competition. Who can finish this first? Add a time limit. You've got 5 minutes. Let's see how many of these items in this exercise you can do working in pairs. I'll stop you after 5 minutes. with open-ended sentence making, add some kind of rule. Remember I said that something can be transformed into a game by adding some kind of constraint or rule. So make a sentence with this word, but it has to be false. Make a sentence with this word, or in this, we're using this grammatical structure, but it has to be in the form of a question. It has to be negative. It has to include a certain word. It has to be exactly 7 words long. Sentences can't include the letter L. All of these are constraints which transform sentence making into a slightly more challenging game-like activity. And I said the converse, increasing the learning value of a conventional game. If we think about how much they'll learn. So for example, Simon Says, you all know the game Simon Says, which we play with young learners, right? If I say Simon Says, you do it. If I don't say Simon Says, you don't do it. And my variation is, instead of Simon Says, I say, please. So if I say, please, you do it. And if I say, don't say, please, you don't do it. And it teaches them politeness. And please is a much more useful phrase than Simon Says. So it's better for language learning. Who took the money instead of who stole the cookie from the cookie jar? And this is a game I call detectives. One student goes outside. The teacher gives a coin to one student who is the thief. And that student is the thief in that they actually have my coin, right? So the detective comes back and says, asks one of the students, do you have the money? That student denies it and blames someone else, like the cookie jar. No, I don't have the money, Jack has the money. The detective then turns to Jack and asks them, and Jack says, no, I don't have the money, Seema has the money, and so on and so on. After they've asked and been turned to someone else, incidentally, the student who is the thief also denies it, like everybody else. The detective is asked to guess who they think looks guilty, who they think actually has the money. And it's very, very often they can actually guess. In my experience, the person who has the money is the only one who stays serious, and all the others are smiling. So very often that's a giveaway, but sometimes they can't. In any case, it's a much better teacher of English. It's a much better vehicle for English practice than is the original cookie jar one. And miming, what am I doing? But you can also use it to practice other tenses. What have I just done? Or what am I going to do? Miming something which shows something which is just finished or something which is about to begin. So in conclusion then, it's sometimes okay to play games that have no language learning, with a difficult class, say, to keep them quiet, or at the end of a long day as a sort of break or a prize, as someone mentioned earlier in the chat box, to fill in time at the end of a lesson. But in most situations, make sure your games have learning value, opportunities for language use, optimum participation, and do not demand too much preparation or later clearing up. And finally, further reading, 3 books from a Cambridge series, which I edited for a while. Games for Language Learning, Andrew Wright, David Betteridge, and Michael Buckby. Drama Techniques, Alan Maley and Alan Duff. And a book I wrote with Andrew Wright, 5-minute activities. All of these have lots and lots of rich ideas for language teaching, language learning games. And thank you for your attention and participation. And I think we've run out of time, 1 minute to go. But if you want to add time for questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Let's give her a nice round of applause, everyone. Thank you very much for that. That was very informative. We do have time for some Q&A if anyone would like to ask questions.
And if I don't, I'm just leaving my email up there on the screen for another second or two. If anybody wants to write to me with questions or comments, please feel free. Okay. Yes.
I will be stopping the live stream shortly because that tends to make people nervous for Q&A. So feel free to ask questions if you have any questions. There were some in the chat I noticed. I don't know, Martin, if you could monitor that. I'm going to go ahead and shut the live chat down.
Let's see here. There was a question I noticed earlier, I think regarding the